Hi, everybody. I am Dianne A. I'm an intuitive mentor for gifted creative people, and I am so excited to talk to Pearl today and have an exciting conversation. So join us for all the fun we're about to have.
Hello, sunshine. Good to see you again. Had to walk out to let you back in.
Hey everybody, it's Pearl, and I'm so excited to have you guys on today with us. And we are on Conversations with Pearl. And you know, I'm the owner of Women's Successful Living, where I love to help you find your Shiro power within. And today we have a really special guest. So if you follow us, you know that at the end of every session, we do something special, and it's called our Better Question, Better Life cards. And today we have one of the co-authors of the cards, and I can't wait to you guys to meet Dianne A. As we talk with her today. She is amazing because she brings her technically eclectic style when working with gifted, neurodiverse, and visionary adults, teens, and families. Through her knowledge, raw experience, education, and decades of serving creative and smart people, Dianne has crafted unique and inspired ways to bring out the best in everyone. A born introvert, Dianne uses her creative genius and intuition in combination with her education to offer unique programs that has that special touch. So she also is the host of Someone Gets Me podcast and author of 7 published books that complement her life's vision to inspire and offer hope. Dianne, welcome to the show today.
Oh, thank you, Pearl, for having me. I'm so excited to get to have this conversation with you.
It's so fun because everybody knows that we do the cards, and they've met Carol on another podcast. And now I have you on. It's so great. And we really haven't officially met in person, but I feel like I've known you forever just because we crossed different paths together and on the social media and all that great stuff. So I would love for you to share with the audience a little bit about who you are. I know we just shared your bio, but who is Dianne, and what makes Dianne tick?
Oh, wow. I am somebody who has eternal hope for the world, and I love to inspire people. And I'm multifaceted. We call it being a multipotentialite. And so my hands are into lots of things. That's why I have a podcast, and I have books, and I quilt, and I race sailboats, and I do all different kinds of things, because I really believe that a multi-diverse kind of life with lots of nuance in it is valuable. A funny story, when I was 17 or 18, I was starting my career as a mental health person. I'm credentialed in mental health and substance abuse and all kinds of things internationally for years. And in the very beginning, I had this voice in my head, and it said, learn everything you can. You're going to need it. And I'm like, well, I love to learn. So that's cool. And now, decades later, when I'm working with gifted, talented, creative people all over the world, all that information I've been gathering is coming into play. And I'm like, I'm so glad I listened to that voice. So I just like to see people happy and stop pathologizing their lives. It's time to let go of the pathology and realize you're okay. It's going to be okay. There's just a different road maybe or something, but it's solvable.
I love that, how you put that, because we do. I remember growing up too, we have these voices. I had the voice that said, you're going to go be a teacher. And I was like, okay, yeah. And I didn't have great educators that when I graduated high school that could help me understand how to get into college with help. My parents were clueless on how to do that. So I became the school of hard knocks. And like you said, I learned, and I've gotten my coaching degree and all that as I've gone along. And I love how you shared, that we have to listen, that we have those voices in us that we don't tune into often. And I think it's powerful you shared that. And we're going to get into that. But I want to know, okay, you guys, when you're on the podcast here and you're listening, we talk a lot about self-care. So we're going to do a little reverse, because Dianne, you like to go sailing. Did you say racing with them?
I was raised racing sailboats. We lived in Sarasota, Florida, and I hardly went to school on a Friday or a Monday because we were delivering the boat up to St. Peter, Davis Island, to Tampa, and then coming back. So it's an 8-hour trip on the boat. And from the time I was very young, I've been racing boats, and it is the second most dangerous sport in the world. It requires physical finesse and power and creativity. It requires all of us. And when I first started, the only women racing was my mother and me. And there were no women racing boats then. The only women on the docks were wives and girlfriends and family members. They weren't actually getting on the boat to go race. And um, I'm so grateful for that experience.
Yeah, wow. I was just gonna say because I don't it's very rare that you hear about women, racers, at our young age, right? And now there's so many great women that are doing this sport because I know my son who passed used to love to watch it and we would sit there and watch it sometimes the races and all and then how cool is it we're gonna come out at the Super Bowl, but how cool is at the Super Bowl we have all women doing the flyover now. I mean, we've come so far. It's so fascinating.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's wonderful. I go out now and I sail, and one of the boats I race on has a real mixed crew. And sometimes there's more women than men on the boat, and it's beautiful. Because I remember I was one of the guys growing up. Like I was not treated any differently. In fact, one time we were on the boat and my brother was steering, and the other the other guy who was trimming the boat along with me, we had the same position and we had to work together, and he was weaker than I was. I was physically stronger than him. And my brother said, even my sister can do it, and stuff like that. And it's like, but I never really realized that like I was supposed to be like the girl. Like I was just one of the crew. I was accepted as one of the people. And it was many years later when I really started seeing like all the differences of the way women get treated or did get treated, because I wasn't treated that way. I was totally accepted in my sport. So I'm really grateful for the people around me, from the very beginning.
Yeah, and I think that's important too, as we're talking today, is that for the listeners and to women in general to understand that, you know, as we're raising, I talk often about raising our young adults now to let them start thinking. You and I both are in the self-care, the mental fitness realm, and to start our kids young to understanding that nothing can hold you back. It doesn't matter who you are, what race you are, whether you're gay or straight or whatever it is, you can do whatever it is you want to do. You just have to have that mindset. And if we start our kids, I always share the TikTok. I don't know the girl's name. I got to find her and I'm going to get her mom and her daughter on here. But I love, she gets up in the morning. She has this cute little robe on. She looks like this young version of her mom. And she's like, I don't do negative today. And she's got all this positive affirmations and things she says. And I was like, if, I grew up in a household where my dad was in the Marines and he was gone at 3 tours of Vietnam. So my mom was working out of the house, running the home while my dad was, gone almost 13 years of my life. And so she didn't have time to stop and go, let me make sure I pour into you and know how, a positive thinking. We didn't grow up that way. And today with so much, I was talking with a friend today and was telling me about a thing about the social media, some documentaries. Like, you got to go watch them. Like, I don't need to watch it. I see it every day with people that I coach, but we get so into this social media realm of, well, they look like this, so I should look like this. And we forget that, we're not what we're always showing on social media, right? That's not always who you really are. I saw somebody posted yesterday that said, when they go out to eat, no matter how bad the service is, they always give a great tip because they what they said. And it's a great example. And I was like, wow, I never thought about it that way, is that you don't know what that person's gone through that day coming into their shift. And I think, mindset plays a big role in how, like you described being on the boat, you weren't treated any different. And our mindset allows us to realize that we have that potential and don't be treated differently. Go after, don't let anybody box you into anything. And I know, Dianne, that's what you coach on a lot as well.
Oh, I do. I actually do mentoring, which is different than coaching. So I'm more of a mentor, but I had an assistant one time years ago, and he was really cool. And he said to me one day, he was cooking my lunch. My office was this huge house. And one of his things was he would watch the food channel and then copy the recipes, taking out all the fat and everything. And then I would try them. And I worked a lot. And so he would like put food in front of me and make me eat and stuff like that. And it was this ongoing joke. And one day he was stirring something and he wasn't looking at me, but he was talking to me. He goes, people who push the box or, push the envelope. I go, yes. He goes, you don't have an envelope. And I was like, you're right. I don't. But I never really saw it that way. I didn't know it then, and so I look back and there's these moments where people said things to me that were reflecting back to me this light about me that I didn't even know because I was just living it, and I still laugh about that comment because he's right.
And I think, for me, I was a people pleaser. Everything I did, it was like, I want to make sure that they like me. I want to make sure, I grew up I went to school over in West Palm Beach, Florida, and I went to high school with the likes of Burt Reynolds' nephews and those actors. And so they had this, like, regard. You felt like you're a little smaller than they were. And some of them made you feel that way. And it's funny because after my high school reunion, we had our first high school reunion. I'm like, they're just like me, but I didn't see that going to school. And so I kind of had this thought of, I don't want anybody to not like me. I want to, if you want me to do something, I'm going to say yes all the time. And, and then when I got my feelings hurt, I never expressed how that felt or anything. I would bottle it up inside until I blew up. Right. And I remember when I met my husband, he was so funny. He used to, we have this disagreement. I mean, I grew up in a house, if my parents did not if they had an argument, they would not talk for 2 weeks, and all of a sudden everything's fine. Right. And so that's all I knew. So when my husband and I would have a disagreement or I didn't like something he said, I would just shut down and ignore him. And he would go, I can't answer or address what's bothering you if you don't tell me. And I would just just ignore it, shut down. So he got smart. He started having my conversations for me. And then I was like, that's not what I would have said, And so I learned because of him, like, to step out of that box, is to open up my envelope, like you said, and become who I am. And it took me a while. I didn't, I was very young, 19. It took me quite a few years to figure it out. But once I did, I realized I have to stop doing this people pleasing. I have to stop allowing others to determine my pride, my joy. And so that's when I started really delving in deep, and I took a pebble. I had to put a pebble in my pocket, Dianne, and I had to move it once, 3 times a day to say no to something, so that when I said yes, it meant that I really was saying yes to that. Right. And so, yeah. And so as a mentor, like, walk us through with some of the folks that you mentor and you help. What do they expect when they come and they're working with you?
Well, what they always say is, well, the first thing they say is someone gets me. That's why my podcast is named that, because I listen very deeply on levels that most people have never been heard. And so it's very moving for them. Most of the people come to me because they have like an inner desire to do something and they don't know what to do with it, or they have anxiety or depression, not sleeping. Or simply they just want to have a better life. Just like people come to me for all kinds of things. I do a lot of performance work with professors and academic people so that they can, do their research better, do different things better. So there's lots of different reasons. But what they can expect is that I will hear them like nobody's ever heard them, and that I can use my intuition and all my knowledge and experience to help see things that maybe they can't see. So I kind of imagine it like shining the light of truth into this dark room, and like, we have this flashlight and let's go check it out. And in fact, one of my clients the other day said, it's like, I've been going around the mountain, and you had the fire lit all the time. Why didn't I just stop, and be with the light? And so, I help them see the road and ask very effective questions, knowing that their truth comes from them, and that my job is to elicit it, ask good questions, and then help them put it into a paradigm, an idea that then they can move forward. I work relationally. I don't work by the hour. Nothing I do is typical in our culture, because the people I work with aren't typical. And so I'm available 24/7, and people email me, call me, text me all the time, within reason, of course. And because life doesn't happen only when we're about to have a meeting, I like to know what's going on before the meeting, so that time we're together is of the highest use. And it works really well. And so I've created my own system, my own way to help somebody bring that heart's desire, inner fire, and bring it to the table by bringing their vision, their creativity, and then learning how to take a Venn diagram, learning how to execute it. Like, okay, this is what you do. And they have me in their corner, like, no matter what. And so when they go off and try something or do something or have a celebration or I don't know what I did wrong, they've got me always unconditionally being there for them with the next best question so that they can do it. So it's an honor and a thrill and a big privilege that people choose to work with me because it's very deep work. It's deeper than therapy in a lot of ways because I'm also a therapist. And it's deeper than that because it's more of a calling, more of a mission, inner fire. Like most people don't share their what they want to do, their real legacy. They don't share it ever because they're afraid that they'll never get to it. And I want to encourage people to share it so they can get to it. Don't let that fear stop you.
I love that. I love that you share like the mountain, you know, going around that mountain. The fire is always there. We have that fire in us. Like we're saying, we have to get the tools and the help to help like make it flame even more to bring it out of us and get out of push the fear out of the way. And, you know, I love that you share that too. And also how you let them, they have it inside of us. I've shared on the show before where I'll have a client that's come to me and I know they've worked with somebody before and I'm like, okay, so why didn't that work? And they'll often say, well, you know, they told me to do everything right. And they led the way, they coached and all this. But their life wasn't an example. And I was like, okay, you know, so we would go through. So what are you expecting from me? Because my life's not perfect. And I'm very honest with that. And if that coach told you that they did everything perfectly, rightfully so, you should find somebody else that's going to help you because everybody's life is not perfect. I've lost a son. You know, my son had an addiction issue. You know, I've been through stuff as well. And so, you know, and as I start working with them, like what you said, is finding that what is their deep desire? You know, I want to be happy. Okay, great. But what does that look like for you? You know, you want joy. What's that look like for you? You know, so I love that you share that and like dig in deep into that because we often don't, we just kind of peel the top of the layer. We don't often get right to the bottom and open up the onion all the way. And I think that's a powerful way of coaching and mentoring and to help somebody get to that because, and then like you said too, having somebody in their pocket, you know, often that's one thing that I used to coach for Dale Carnegie when I lived in Virginia. And we had to talk with them every week before they would come for their course, because when they got to the session, we wanted them to be prepared for what they're going to have happen that night and that little bit of time we have together. So I love that you are, you know, you help them prepare ahead of time and let them know that you're there, because that was the one thing I loved too. And I love to do now is like, if you need me, okay, within reason, call me and I'll help you. And I think that's really a great attribute for someone who's a mentor and a coach that help guide others through that. So Dianne, tell us now, I know, how long have you been doing this for? It's been a long time. And then you also, okay, so you were sailing here in Florida and now you've moved. We talked before we came on. So what, after you talk about how long you've been doing this, lead us into what brought you out of the state of Florida.
Well, I've been doing this type of work and it's different, varied expressions for 40 years, 45 years, somewhere in there, a long time. Makes me feel old when I say that. But it's been in lots of different things. I've done, you know, mental health work and psychiatric triage and substance abuse and co-occurring things. And, you know, I've been on Anderson Cooper. I've done a lot with my career over time. But it's always been to inspire and educate people and remind people of their value. So it's been all different things. I moved to North Carolina 2 years ago from Florida. It was a spiritual decision. I didn't plan it. If you would have asked me beforehand, will you ever leave Florida? I'd say no. Like, why would I do that? That's the goofiest thing you'd ever ask me. And I'd come up to a little bit to Weaverville, which is just a little north of Asheville, for a vacation to get away. And I heard this message again, like it. Now I know it's intuition. When I first heard the one to learn everything I could, I didn't know what it was. Now I know what it is. So I listened, and it was, you know, come be with the trees. Now that is crazy. Or thought of it like, why would I go be with the trees when I'm a water girl and I sail boats like almost every single day? Like, how does that work? You know, like I like waterfalls. That's just the far as I could go. But it was really, really hounding me to do that. So then fast forward a little bit longer, one of my really good friends that I met in Florida had moved up to Winston-Salem, which is where I am now, to take a job. And in the meantime, her mom passed away and she was really struggling. And I had moved my business to an all virtual business well before COVID. So I was already either doing home visits or online. And as I have clients in more than one continent. So, I mean, so I had already done all that. So I said, well, as long as you have internet, I just come up there. I'll see my people when I'm up there. She's like, okay. So I just drove. I didn't even really know where North Carolina, Winston-Salem was exactly. I looked on the map. I'm like, all right. So we went for a ride around, and she's showing me different neighborhoods. And I'm like, I love this place. Oh my God, I love this too. Oh my God, I love this too. And I'm like, the only other city I ever did that with was Seattle. And I'm like, and she goes, there's 5 universities, including North Carolina School of the Arts. It's the city of arts and innovation, which is totally my thing. And I'm like, well, all right then. So then I saw a real estate person, put a couple offers in on houses, and didn't get any of them because it was right at the beginning of all this crazy housing stuff. And then I left, and she found the house I live in now. And it's exactly what I had prayed for. I wanted a certain number of square feet, bedroom, bath, like the whole thing, with fireplace, cathedral ceilings, whole thing. And this house is exactly that. And the address adds up to 22, which is my master number. So it's totally was meant for me. There were 7 offers and I got it. And well, of course I did, because so I'm up here to be with the trees. I really am not sure totally yet what that means. I love the trees. So, and I love Pachamama, Mother Earth, and all that. So that part's really good. And I go back to Florida frequently. I spend time with my friends there. I go sailing there. I'm still a water person, and I'm not disconnected from Florida, but I'm actually grateful I left. I'm not liking what's happening with the anger and the disregard for human life that's happening in that state right now. It's actually quite disgusting, and I'm actually cry about it a lot. My lovely home, right after I moved, that big spill happened in Tampa Bay and destroyed all that. And I'm watching the environment get killed. I'm watching more and more anger. I'm watching just terrible decisions being made for the welfare of the people of that state. And it makes me sick to my stomach. So I have gratitude that divinely I was moved out, because I think to be there would be really painful to be there full time now. It's sad. To me, it's very sad. So I cry a lot about it. And I'm wondering why I'm up here with trees.
Well, what I love too is, like you were said, like, and we were talking earlier about, listening to the voices and the intuition, right? And I love that you, like, we don't listen. I know when I'm coaching women, we don't, like, they come in like, you have the answer inside. I'm just going to help you fish it out, pull it out, because it's in there. And I love to watch them grow into listening to that voice, right? And I can tell you, like, over the last 6 months with the loss of Matthew, I, I've lost my grandfather. People have gone before Matthew, and I've kind of felt things, and just those voices. But like in the last 6 months, it was so funny. My husband, I was like, "Did you see that?" Like, he's like, "What are you talking about?" Like I could just feel things. Like I tell him all the time, I'm like, I feel him around me, and some people go, "That's just because that's." I'm like, no, I believe that there's things that guide us, and and coming here to Florida, we left Virginia. We were in Virginia for over 13 years. I was a top 5 mortgage broker in my company. I was the number 1 female in the company. I was doing very well, but I wanted to spend more time with my kids, but when I got here, I realized I did not want to be a stay-at-home mom, because I didn't like the drama of the PTAs and things like that. And so I started on this venture of, it started out with losing 60 pounds, and then I decided to become a life coach, and so, but listening to those voices, like, I know things are already ready for us, right? Like I often talk here on the show that we come into this world, no matter who you believe in, you've got a talent in you. You've got great gifts within you. And if you don't learn to find them and fine tune them, you're cheating yourself. But then you cheat me and others, because I don't get to receive those great gifts, right? And that manifestation, I so believe in manifestation. And like you said, Dianne, like you saw, all those, the 22 and all those signs were there to be there. And you follow that, because oftentimes we don't follow and listen to those things, especially that are in our gut, that we know we should listen to, but we choose not to listen to. Right. And so I love that you do that. And I always tell everybody, like, right now we're working on some really cool stuff. We have what's called our Shira League. It's a community of women. We meet Sunday evening from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern time. And we're working on some things in there, which I'm going to ask you some questions and a little bit about what we're doing. And then watch them, they surface their joy, right? I'm like, no, 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 no. Yeah, my kids bring me joy. I'm happy with my kids. They bring me lots of joy. But I want to know, like, really, why do your kids bring you joy? And I gave an example. I'm like, I can tell you my youngest, he brings me joy because he is such, as much as an introvert he can become very extrovert when he believes in something, when he's passionate about, he's very passionate about history, he's passionate about what's happening in the world, but he's also at the same time respectful to know that we all have opinions. And it's hard. You don't see that in a lot of young adults right now, to respect each other's opinions, right? And so I really believe that tool in the manifestation and listening to our gut. Is there a time, Dianne, when you didn't listen to your gut and you go, oh, I should have listened to that?
Oh, thousands of times along the way. There's been multiple times where red flags would go like, watch this. This is not safe. This person, watch this motive, undisclosed motive, stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, well, that doesn't really matter. I'm just going to do my thing and it's okay. And I see it and it always blew up in my face. And before I called it intuition, like it was 1983 when I had an experience that secured the fact that I'm listening to the voice. I know it's intuition. I know it's higher guidance. And I really didn't care. And I still don't care what anyone says about it. Like you can argue with me about it. And I even say I will follow it, even and especially if my human self is resistant. Like, because I know better, I know that there's something greater and I'm going to follow it because when I don't, it's not pretty. And I'm kind of tired of that, So there have been lots of those times. And there's been times where I had a really cool, like, intuition, go do this or go check out that or whatever. And I didn't. And I wish I had, or I did later than I was told to, or than I was prompted to. So I'm learning still, even though I made that decision. But every time I followed it, Pearl, every time something more amazing and more beautiful showed up than I could ever imagine. And I could never have scripted it. So I always say life never turns out the way we think it's going to. It's always better, but we have to be willing to say yes and do our part. We have to be willing to take the actions, right? And sometimes the action is stop, don't go there, And so I've learned how to stop and don't go there more over time and say yes to the things that draw me. So I think it's a practice. I think that's why it's important to have people in our world that we can run things by or talk to. And, because we're trained, we should do it all on our own. And that's not correct.
Yeah, and that's so true. I have a friend, Lisa. She calls it your balcony people. Like, have the people on your balcony that are there to support you, and you can run those things by, right? And bounce them off and all that. And there's many times my husband, I met him, like I said, young, and we were living in California, and his sister was dating this gentleman. She was still a senior in high school, I believe it was. And she's like, I want you to talk to him, meet him over the phone before you come to my graduation. I'm like, okay, fine. I never saw his face because this is before social media and cell phones. We're on a good old fashioned telephone. And we hung up and I told my husband, I go, you need to watch him. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you need to watch him. There's something there. I just have a bad feeling. I'm not sure that I like this guy. And I, of course, said nothing to my sister-in-law. And sure enough, a few weeks later, he wanted my in-laws to buy a car for him and just all these things. And my husband's like, wow. And then, there would be other things that would come up. And I tell my husband, we need to be careful about this. And he's like, okay, I'm going to start listening to you because your gut and your intuition, even to the degree that now, like I've started to say before, like the night that my son passed, we had spoken to him like probably 20 minutes before he passed. He butt dialed us by accident. And he swore to us that he had an Uber, and unfortunately he didn't have an Uber. So he'd made some choices that unfortunately contributed to his passing. But about like around the time he passed, I remember the time exactly. I was sitting on the couch, and normally I sit near my husband at one end of the couch. He's a recliner, and I sit at the end of the couch of the recliner. And I moved to this other seat, and I was just shaking uncontrollably. And my husband's like, you're going to have a heart attack. You got to come down. I'm like literally going, I look at him and go, I'm telling you right now this is not a heart attack. I'm fine, but something's wrong. Right. And then sure enough, unfortunately, the next day we found out on the news that my son passed. Nobody came to our door, but that's a whole nother story. But he says now, he's like, okay, you say you feel Matthew, you say you feel these things. How do you know? And I'm like, you just have to sometimes just be quiet. Because I told him, I go, there's things there all around you because he runs a business. I'm like, I said, because you've come home and tell me and share with me a situation with an agent you're working with. And I'm like, so what did your gut tell you? And it's like, well, I thought I should do this, but I didn't. And I'm like, so that was your intuition. You thought was the feeling coming in and letting you know. You've got to listen to that, that emotional intelligence piece of it. And so he's it's interesting to watch him start tapping into that. I think more because he thinks he's going to have better connections with my son, but it's funny to watch him connect with so many other things in his life now. And that's so powerful. And so Dianne, as you mentor and you're working with clients, how do you lead them through and how do you help them like really see that success? Because sometimes, we question, like with Chuck, oh, I don't know that that's really intuition. Maybe it's something else. Like, how do you help them understand that that's something they need to be really paying attention to deeply?
Oh, there's lots of ways and everybody's different and unique. So it's not the same thing, but the key is I teach confirm and validate and teach them an actual strategy of how to tell if it's your intuition or not and play it out and be able to see it. And then I'm really good at pointing it out. Like that was your intuition. That was your gut, that you're calling it your gut or your instinct. And that's the same thing as intuition. And remember this, intuition is the highest form of intelligence. It is not woo-woo. And so your intelligence is greater than you realize. And intelligence is just not your IQ. It's much bigger than that. So I do a lot of education and help people see that there's more going on. And I confirm it a lot. And I help them learn how to do their own verifying and confirming process so that they can develop the foundation to understand how to tell. And so that's why I let people email me and text me, because I have one person and she's amazing. And she's like, well, I verified it, I confirmed it, and this is what's going on now. And then we're okay, well, how do we look at the next step? How do we see where it's going? Because intuition is not time bound. And there's also free will and there's also changes that can happen. So I was working with the family and I got a strong intuition that the parents were in danger and the son was acting up and there was all this stuff and something wasn't right. I didn't know exactly, but I knew it was not good. And so I'm like, all right, rather than freaking out and getting afraid and warning everybody and being nuts, I'm like, okay, well, now when I'm working with them, I'm going to ask them different questions and I'm going to follow that information, that feeling I was getting. And I uncovered some things that shifted everything. And it averted what could have been a mess. And they look back now and they go, wow, you really averted a problem. And I'm like, yeah. And later on, the mother, who's very, very intuitive herself, said, so put on those Jedi mind glasses. I need to see this and that, And so then other times they call me Mary Poppins. Everybody has names. Somebody else I work with calls me Yoda. So it's because I'll follow it and then I'll teach them how to follow their version, because no two people do it the same. And so once that person begins to get some confidence, and you get confidence because you're competent, and you have to build competence by learning the strategy, how to do it. So I kind of translate it into their language. So I was working with a whole group of neuroscientists doing a retreat. I thought this is a perfect way to ask if they use their intuition, right? The nerdy, geeky researcher people. And so I said, how many of you all use your intuition in your work? Immediately, everyone in the room raised their hand and said yes and laughed. Of course we do. And I was so happy to hear that, because of course they do. And they could identify it and they knew how to verify and confirm what their gut was telling them for the next part of their research. That's where the power is working it together, not to the exclusion, but in the concert with all the rest of our other intelligences. And so it's fun. I love to teach the process so that people can gain their confidence and then see their joy. And I'm like, and I celebrate with everybody like, yes, this is so cool. You got it.
And I know it's so rewarding to watch, and it's those that are not watching, you'll have to go see on YouTube. Like Diane's face just lit up with that, because that's so rewarding, is to watch people come into themselves, come and recognize those talents that they have, and recognize that, yeah, that's your intuition, that's your guidance, giving you your roadmap of where to start, and to learn to tap into it. And you're right, it can certainly change things in your life if you listen to it. If you really pay attention, it can make big changes. And if you don't listen to it, like you were saying earlier, Diane, it can make things change the way we don't want them to change either. And it's so powerful to share that. So I want to talk to you about what we're doing in the Shira League right now. So excuse me, in the Shira League.
Can I add one thing really quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is so important, I think. Intuition is not good, bad, right, or wrong. And it's not telling us what to do that's good, bad, right, or wrong. It is simply acting like a GPS and giving us information, and we get to choose how we drive. And that's where our power is in that choice. Here's the information. How are you going to do it? And it's not linear time, and so that, I think, is where the magic is.
I so agree with you. And then also too, on top of that, if you're not sure, somebody like Diane, as a mentor and coaches, or, always ask for help, because if you're not sure, it's so important to get help, because once you start understanding where that GPS is leading you, life can be so amazing. It can just be so amazing. I just love it. Okay, so right now, one of the things we're doing in the Shira League, everybody starts out the year, they set goals, they set visions, they do vision boards, all that stuff. And we do those too, but we haven't started our vision. I do vision purses, Diane. I believe if you can carry your vision on a purse with you out in the world, that energy for what you put thought and process into is going to help be with you all day long. But to get to that vision purse, I want you to break down really what it is you want on that purse or on that vision, right? So right now, one of the things we're working on over the past few weeks is what brings us joy first. So, and like we were talking a few minutes ago, and it's not just the foo-foo stuff. Oh, the sun, the weather, like you're describing sailing. Like I could see that brings you joy, and you broke down why it brought you joy, right? So if we were to say, Diane, make your top 10 list of what brings you joy, but tell us the top 3. What top 3 would be on your list right now, and why do they bring you joy?
Oh, that's fun. But first, let me define for you how I experience joy. I believe that joy is our natural state, and that anything other than that is an altered state. So for me, what brings me joy is taking off of the veil of something that was covering up my natural joy. So I'm not looking outside of myself or finding a thing or whatever. Like, I don't have that worldview. My worldview is, okay, well, what can come into my life that will resonate with the joy that is me, and kind of get rid of some of the static, whatever that would be. And so then that would be nature in all of its beauty, whether it's hugging a tree or a waterfall or racing a boat or laying in water, all forms of nature. I have selenophilia, which is a love and respect of the moon. And when the moon is in certain phases, I just go and just hang with the moon. Like, I love that. And there are ways to connect on deep levels. Like, people who follow me on Facebook notice that every once in a while I'll put up a flower and I'll just hashtag joyful moments. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just loving nature and sharing joy because there's no reason. It's just a beauty thing. So that's the big one. Another way that I experience joy is by being creative and letting whatever inside of me show up in ways I never expected. Like, I learned how to quilt about 7 years ago, and now I love quilting. I've always sewn, but not like this. And I even made a set of quilts that all matched for a family I worked with as a gift for them. They're amazing. And I love quilting. And it's creative because it takes the right and the left hemispheres of your brain, and it actually requires your brain to harmonize. And I'm like, therapy, this is perfect. And I also use my creativity with my writing. And because, I have all these books out, and I have 2 more getting ready to come out. And I love to create just about anything. I have 3 podcasts. Someone gets me this big one, but I have 2 others. And I love to bring something new into the world from whatever the ethers are, whatever that would be. I love to cook for friends and things like that. So creativity is another piece along with nature. And the third thing is movement, whether it's a God walk, with my bare feet on Mother Earth, or going to the gym. I love training. I love working out, or laying on the floor and hanging out with my dog, or just stretching or whatever. Like even my chair, because it moves. My chair is mobile. So even when I'm sitting, I'm moving because I love to feel the essence of my being moving through space. Like I love that experience, whatever that is. And so I move. And people look at me and go, oh my God, you're like the Energizer Bunny. You're always doing something. You're always busy. And I'm like, well, I'm a manifesting generator. So I am always busy, but I also have plenty of time because I have a belief that time expands as I need it. So I don't worry about it. I always have time to do whatever it is I want to do. And when my brain says you don't have enough time, I'm like, well, that's a lie. I have plenty of time. And so I get to create cool things, cool gourmet conversations. Another one, Pearl, that really is part of the movement and the creativity. Like I love to have amazing conversations with people about practically anything because it's just that it's like the yumminess of a gourmet meal, right? I just love that. So those are the things that just really enliven the joy that is my essence into the world.
And I love that all of those. And I love what you said too about gourmet conversations, because I feel like we've kind of gotten away from that. People get so busy in life that they don't stop and have good conversations. And, I remember one of the things I taught this to my kids that we coached in Dale Carnegie was also how to have a conversation with somebody who has a different opinion than you, right? Because
right.
Especially in this day and age where we are all over, everything's everywhere, every opinion is everywhere, and it's their opinion. And so how to have that conversation, be like, I hear what you're saying, and have you thought about this? Or, have those really great conversations. I love how you shared the conversations, because we've gotten so far that we're behind our phones so much and, on our computers, that we don't sit and have a great conversation. And I remember when we downsized our house here in Florida, our kids, moved out and everything. So we moved from up the street to Winthrop area. And my reason why I wanted to be here was because I could walk to everything. I'm like you. I like to be outside. I like to walk. I have a front porch swing on my front porch, and I like to sit out there. I've got a great lanai in the back, so I'm either front or back, enjoying the nature and just the quiet. Or sometimes I'll sit outside and I'll watch the moms and dads pick up the kids at the school across the street, because I love to watch that hustle and bustle as well. And we don't have those conversations. So when we moved here, we didn't re-up our cable. We just had like streaming. And it was great because my husband stopped watching the news on the TV all the time. I was like, turn that news off. I'm tired of the news. And so we would be having these great conversations. And then, like I said, our son, Nate, him or his brother would come over to watch the boys converse with my husband and myself. But I used to love to sit in the family room and just watch them talk with their dad. It's like having really great, those adult conversations, right? It's so fun. So much fun to do that. I just love that you shared that as well. Okay. So then the other thing that we're working on, Dianne, is we're working on what not to do. Oftentimes we make that to-do list that says, I got to go to the grocery store, all these things I have to get done. But we create that not to-do list so that we can release the things that are keeping us from being with nature, having the gourmet conversations like what you were sharing. What's some of Dianne's stuff that's on her not to-do list?
Judgment of myself, others, or circumstances. And for me, judgment is assigning value to something. Discernment is saying it's for me or not for me in that moment. Judgment is, well, it's not for me, so therefore it's bad or wrong. I really work on that a lot. And not to do, negative self-talk, beating myself up or cutting myself down or saying that about other people. Well, they're not creative in the way I am, or, whatever, all that stupid stuff that goes on. I watch that. Because I have lots of trains of thoughts going on at the same time in my mind. So I always have to it's like herding cats sometimes in here, like, okay, everybody go this way, and so I do that. And a not to do also is get caught in the inertia of, like doing nothing, sitting, like fooling ourselves into thinking that resting is not okay. So we're machines, or I deserve to rest more, which is really not rest. It's just avoidance, and really being clear with what's the purpose, because there's 7 kinds of rest. And so what are we doing? So I really pay a lot of attention to that. And my big not to do is all of that. It's more inner work because I know it comes out. And the other big one, the biggest one, I think, is I have a little affirmation. And my affirmation is I'm not under the spell of human ignorance. And I know there's always more. And I also know that nothing is as it seems in the bigger picture, because there's always more. And so I say I'm not under the spell of human ignorance, mostly my own, but others too. Like, if you're watching the news or you're watching this or that or the other thing, well, who said it's true? And how do you know it's true? It doesn't even matter. And what is true? Like there's so many questions. So I do that. And then the other thing I'm always saying to myself is I'm raising my vibration, because I see kind of things as a vibration. So if I want to attract good and beauty and more joy and a higher life experience in that way, then it's important that on a physical level, I raise my vibration. So that means, what am I eating? Am I moving my body? What am I doing? Am I being nice to myself? All those things kind of go with raising vibration and coming out of the spell of my own human ignorance. And so those sentences make me smile, because there's so many levels, and I'm clearly not anywhere near perfect. And it reminds me that the spiritual definition of perfection means to be teachable. So that definition, I'm in. The human linear definition, I try to stay away from. So I massage that, and that those are my big not to do's, is to get caught up in the trance of ignorance, because it's goofy.
Those are great examples. And I love the judgment too, because we often judge ourselves so much. And I love affirmations. When we had our house in the market, one of the first realtors that we first started with before we switched, I had an affirmation on my mirror. And she's like, you're going to have to erase those off. I'm like, no, I'm not erasing those off. Those are there every morning for me. If they don't like it, they just don't buy my house. It's like, that's how I looked at it. It's just, every morning I have my affirmations. And it's interesting, what you were saying about the movement too. My mom's here visiting us right now, and we are really trying to get her to move here with us. We're the slowly baby steps with it. And because we know that she gets up out of bed, she goes to the chair, and she goes to the kitchen, get hot tea, come back, and she just sits all day long. And I'm like, and then I watch her when she's here and she's moving, and she's like all these body aches from, because I'm making her go up and down the stairs in my house, making her do those movements. And so I know, that movement is so, so important. Not just, yes, there's a lot of movement in sitting and being quiet, as well. But there's also movement that's necessary in our life. So I'm so glad you shared that with us as well. So what I want to know now, Dianne, is we've talked about your joy and what your not to do list. So I want to know what's coming up for Dianne. What's on the horizon? You talked about, I know you've got books, you got your podcast, and you have 1 or 2 podcasts, I believe you said. And then also, like, what's the rest? What's the next few months look like for Dianne?
That will all be surprised to see how this unfolds, because I see a lot of shifting going on, a lot of cool things getting ready to emerge that I don't even know what they are yet, but I can kind of feel it. I have 2 books coming out. One's on gratitude and resilience, and it's a 40-day practice to develop more gratitude with a journaling thing. And I wrote that book is ready to go. I am speaking to the cover designer next week. And then my larger book is coming out. It's called Someone Gets Me, how intensely sensitive people thrive in an insensitive world. So that book is going to come out right behind it. I just got it back from my editor. So, those will be coming. I do a lot of public speaking. I'm speaking next month in North Carolina and Winston-Salem, and then I'm going to go to Philadelphia, and then I got a couple conferences in Florida. Because even though I'm an introvert all the way, I know that I have a really bright light. And so when I share myself with people in a real, authentic way, it lights that fire in them and maybe inspires them in a way they never expected. And it may not even have anything to do with the content of whatever it is we're talking about. So I like to put myself in positions to allow that to happen. So all that's happening. And then I'll keep creating and following that inner guidance and see where it leads me. I always know there's something amazing around the corner. So I'm kind of excited myself to go, all right, what neat thing's going to happen? I'm up here with the trees. Okay, it's been 2 years. I'm here with the trees. Now what are we doing? What's the next neat experience and expression of that? So I'm not 100% sure, but those are some of the things that I have a key in on.
I said those were exciting things. I love that too. You talked about, it's going to come. You know that it's coming, that manifestation and that belief. But the other thing too is about, you were talking about, as much as you're an introvert, you have this light that shines. And I love to tell everybody, we all have a story within us, no matter how introverted you are or not. Share it, because it can change somebody's life. It can make a huge difference. I know I went to this speaking boot camp a couple weeks ago, and there was a lady there. We hadn't really met. It was the first day. We hadn't had a chance to meet each other. And I stood up there and shared about the loss of my son. And then she stood up and shared. And there were two different, she lost her daughter, but two different presentations or story sharing on that. And it was interesting because somebody came to me later and I said, well, you just lost your son. She lost her daughter many years ago. And I'm like, but that's your example to show that our stories and our journeys are always so different. It doesn't matter. We could have lost a child on the exact same day, the same hour, same minute, but our journeys are going to be completely different. And so that's, for me, that's why I want to share the stories. And I'm working on sharing that story of grief and overcoming the grief and things that I did. But then also, our oldest was mixed race, and we adopted him as a baby. So I'm writing, our book is called Beyond Skin Deep: Stories of Intercultural Adoption. So, because there's stories there. So I'm glad you share that, because we all have these stories that can help empower and change others. And I just love that you're sharing that. So Dianne, tell everybody where they can find you.
Well, I'm all over social media, but the best way to find me is my corporate website is Visions Applied, VISIONSAPPLIED.com. There's a link on there. It says Connect with Dianne. It takes you to my personal website, which is MsDianneAllen.com. And on there, you'll find all my social media links, all my books, the feed for my podcast, the audio feed. My YouTube channel is at Someone Gets Me. And I have fun. So I do a free 30-minute call for people. So if people want to get to know me, or they have questions, or they just want to talk about whatever they want to talk about, then they can sign up for those. And I love to do those because I love to meet cool people. We do it on Zoom. So it's kind of like, I met somebody from Australia the other day, and somebody else from Germany, and all over the place. And it's so exciting to just connect and share with people. So.
Well, and we'll be sure to share all those links with everybody. So make sure you guys go and take advantage of those great links in the 30-minute session. That's awesome. We can always use some little introspect and where we are. So everybody that's listening, if you've been following us, we do these cards called Better Questions, Better Life. And as I always say, I get no kickback, right, Dianne? I don't get any payment for talking about these. These are just great cards that I met through Dianne's good friend and my good friend, Carol Gill. And Dianne and Carol created these cards. So Dianne, I would love for you to share a little bit about why you and Carol came up with these cards. And again, they're at betterquestionsbetterlife.com. But walk us through, what was the vision behind the cards?
It's such a fun story. We still laugh about it. One day I woke up, and it's an intuitive thing. And I woke up and I'm like, you hear all over the place, if you ask better questions, you have a better life, right? So I went online and got betterquestionsbetterlife.com. Nobody owned it yet, the URL. I thought that was the craziest thing ever. And I'm like, well, I want to make Better Questions, Better Life cards. So I have this idea, and I'm trying to figure out how to make it happen. And people kept trying to charge me a ton of money to create them. I go, I already know how to do the art. I did the art on all of them. And I already kind of know the questions, and I just need to find somebody who'll print them for me. And, I have the artist to do the cover. I don't need coaching to how to do this. So it took me a minute. So in the middle of while I was researching all this, Carol and I are talking. I said, Carol, I'm doing these cards, blah, blah, blah. And we're talking about it. I said, do it with me. Let's do it together. It's much more fun, like for two people to play in the sandbox and one kind of thing. And she's like, yeah, that'd be really fun. I go, yeah, because we both believe better questions, better life. Like that's how both of us believe and live and operate our lives. So it was totally aligned. And she's amazing at question asking. So she came over to my house. It was very soon after that conversation. It could have even been the next day. It was that quick. And we sat in my living room and I said, well, let's have a master number. So there are 77 cards on purpose because a double digit. And so then we just started writing all the different questions and we changed some of them out and we added and we played around and massaged it until the two of us were like, these are really fun and really good. And so then we created them. And it was just one of my most fun collaborations in my lifetime because it was so flow and so easy and so amazing. And Carol's just a genius anyway. And I have such respect for her, and our coming together created a synergy that they would have been okay if I did it on my own, but they are way better with the two of us and our view of helping people really ask better questions. And so then they were born. So we ordered them and they were born.
And I love them. I mean, I use them for every day for myself for meditation. Sometimes I'll put one in the car I'll use it for journaling, or if I'm just like having a little bump in my day, I don't feel like, I need a little pick me up, I'll grab them. And then my son, Matthew, who we lost in July, I had given him a deck of cards when he'd gone off to rehab, and he was using them at rehab as well to do some journaling and such. And in fact, a deck of cards, I told Carol, went with them off to heaven as well. So he could have those as well with him. But I love these cards. And for those that are listening, again, they're called Better Questions, Better Life. And I'm going to tell you, whenever you pick a card, it's always the right card for that day or whatever. We bring these to the retreats that we do. We do pajama retreats every year in September. And this is sort of our cards that Carol will use to kind of start us off for the weekend. And I've given them to friends that do retreats and stuff. I was telling with Dianne before we got on that my one friend, she did a retreat last October, and we kind of laid them off on everybody's seat. And everybody just sat there like, well, we had them pick their card. We didn't lay them down. They picked their card, and we told them just keep it on the table. And then when they would open it, they're like, I don't want that card. I don't like this card. We're like, no, that's a perfect card for you.
Yeah.
The reason why it makes you feel uncomfortable, right?
That's right. Well, I always find that the stronger reaction I have like that, there's the most powerful message is trying to come through. And so I have I stamp my princess foot, I call it. I go, and I stamp my foot, and then I'm like, okay, let's see what the cool message is. Always.
I love that. Okay, so we're going to test Dianne. She's agreed to play along today. So I'm going to shuffle them, and Dianne's going to tell us when to stop, and she's going to answer a card. So here we go, Dianne. Tell me when to stop.
Stop.
All right. So Dianne's questions, oh my gosh, we were just talking about this. It says, what am I creating?
I love it. I am creating beauty and joyful moments in the world and reminding people that joy is their natural state and that we can find a joyful moment anywhere.
Absolutely. Anywhere for anything. I definitely can find joyful moments. Even when you think there's not any near around you, they're right there. You just got to open your eyes and see them. So I love that you share that. And I want to thank you, Dianne, for being with me today. And I want to thank all the listeners and viewers for joining us. And I do want to remind you that our Shiro League does meet every Sunday evening, 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Zoom. You can be in your PJs, no makeup, with makeup, however you want to show up, glass of wine, cup of tea, cup of coffee, whatever it is for you, because we are a community of women that are uplifting each other and helping each other find our true joy, overcome challenges, and just support one another. And once a month, we also have a meditation. So come in and work on your self-care a little bit. And if you want to join us, just email Shiro to pearl@wsliving.com. Again, that's Shiro, pearl@wsliving.com. But if you really want to know where you are in your self-care and you want to do a self-care checkup, just go to pearlssurvey.com. That's Pearl Survey. So there's 2 S's in there, .com, and check out what your score is. And we can talk on how to make your self-care numbers even better. So just again, I want to thank everybody for coming. And remember, you come into this world, you're a little rough oyster on the outside, but inside you have your own beautiful pearl. And I hope you go find your inner pearl of greatness. Have a great day.